Hey, it's Dylan. So, after taking a few days to go back and listen to the Q1 2026 Joby Aviation's earnings call, and also wearing some of the care package merch that you might have seen as I was covering the call, and that was a pleasure to do on the Hustle Brothers channel. I always like to actually go ahead and take a few days. I go back and not just read the transcripts, but I like to go back and actually listen to the tone of voice and really what the CEOs, the CFOs, the Q&As from the analysts are saying, and see what I end up picking up. And so I figured I'd go ahead and record and share a video and show some of the highlights that I took away from the Q1 2026 earnings call by Joby Aviation. So let's get into it. We didn't see much price action during the call, and it did take place after hours, so sometimes those calls can be a little less volume, but at the same time be a lot more volatile. So the swing in the share price really did come at market open the next day. So congratulations to all those that were Joby investors going into the call and the next day, where you did see Joby Aviation climb up 22% in the stock price. And so great job for the Joby Aviation shareholders. And if you're not a shareholder of Joby Aviation, but you do hold some stocks that are in the eVTOL sector, I think you probably also saw a bump in the share price as well, as it was a pretty green day overall in the market following Joby Aviation's Q1 2026 earnings call. So now let's get into why everybody's really here, and that's for the highlights of the Q1 2026 Joby Aviation's earnings call, and let's see what we got. So we walked away from the call learning that Joby now has $2.5 billion of cash and cash equivalents on the balance sheet, and also with the CAPEX spend is in line with their half-year quarterly guidance, coming in roughly between $340 to $370 million for the year, for half of the year. And then you also have Joby, who is speaking of the SR3 audit in which they passed. Then you also had Joby speaking to the ASI partnership and leaning into how that is going to modernize the skies and really unlock the eVTOLs and allow them to continue building out the UAM. And then you also had the third leg of the composite team, where now you're getting 2.5 times the volume of parts coming out, and the fiber automation team, who was also added a third leg as well. Let's see what some other highlights are. On this call, we were able to get some extra information about the locations that Joby's in as well. So I'll start with New York, where it wasn't just about the Electric Skies tour. You also had them talking about the infrastructure being built out at the 2 east side heliports, and then also over to LaGuardia Airport, where you would be having Terminal C's parking structure actually be looking to have a conversion to have a vertiport in there as well. And then when you do talk about New York, this was when Joby was leaning in that there was a possible option that sale of aircraft could be something that they would be thinking about as well. Now in Texas, Joby was able to secure the MRO facility that would operate for the region. And in Florida, you have the Orlando International Airport, where they're in talks of building a dedicated vertiport for air taxi services. And then when you go down to Dubai, we see that Sky Sports infrastructure has been completed, and we look for continued infrastructure build out over in the UAE for Joby to do their commercial ops, and we'll get into more of that later too. Inside of some partnership discussions, not only did you have Joby leaning into ASI multiple times, but you had Joby speaking about the partnership with Toyota and how really having that partnership and that collaboration to work with Toyota and that manufacturing team with so many years of experience seems to really be helping JoeBen feel confident about that ramp of manufacturing that will look to take place inside of Joby Aviation in the coming years. And then also leaning into the partnership with L3 Harris, where Joby was saying they have an aircraft that could help fill some gaps. So I think that's again where we look at a program of record being awarded, and that's going to really show some major money on the balance sheet if that happens for these companies. A really good question that came up on the Q&A regarded any bottlenecks that was there for Joby Aviation, and JoeBen had a really good answer back to this. He said there was 3 bottlenecks. 1 being the supply chain, 2 being the ramp in manufacturing, and 3 having the FAA test pilots actually in the sim over at Joby Aviation. And then when talking about the eIPP and the sequencing of the flights for the eIPP, JoeBen really said it all comes down to the infrastructure. So let's keep an eye and let's keep looking out for continued build out of that Joby Aviation infrastructure. So there's the charging networks there for these eVTOLs to hit the skies. We learned on the call that Joby currently is making parts for 9 aircraft and has 5 in production for TIA and the eIPP. And the big question, passenger flights. And JoeBen said he has 2 shots on goal. And he mentioned both the US and the UAE. So let's keep an eye and see if UAE flights are still something that can happen as early as Q3 2026. I took this as a really solid Q1 2026 call for Joby and by JoeBen. And let's keep an eye on the cadence of the eIPP flights, the continued build out of the vertiport networks and the charging infrastructure that will be needed for Joby. And we'll keep an eye on the manufacturing process and see if there's any more tooling that comes into these factories as well. Now, if you had any other highlights that you caught that I was not able to put into this video, or if there's any other thoughts on any of the highlights that I did put into this video, go ahead, drop them in the comments. And if you didn't already, hit that like and subscribe on the way out, and I will see you again.